target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, MBRR Pod. And I know I keep telling you guys we're working on a little bit of a rebranding. Like we're gonna rebrand just a little bit. The channel's not going away. But we're gonna shift the name just a touch, just a titch to cover the totality of everything that I do here, because um I'm not just a protest podcast anymore like this started out. My gosh, April 25th of 2000. I wonder what was going on. What was happening in April of 2020? Couldn't be. Yeah, I better not. I don't know if I trust the algorithm yet through all the different platforms to not get me in trouble for that one. But yeah, for almost coming up on 5 years, I just hit 4,000 subscribers on the channel because of you guys. So thank you very much. And also, I have to do this. They don't demand it, but I do it anyway. I want to give a shout out to the Angry Vet from here on YouTube for being a show producer. He has done so much for the channel by way of gift memberships and super chats, and he has earned his position for a while. And then, of course, IMAP, who came over from Subscribestar. And if you would like to help keep the show going, you can do that either through channel memberships here or through Subscribestar. And if you pick one of the top level from either one of those platforms, you can too become a show producer. And then I have an anonymous who supports the show in a massive way. I don't even know how to describe what all they've done, but they have an anonymous show producer as well. So thanks for that. And while you're at it, as you guys know, we're still in recovery. We're not even a full 4 weeks. Well, by the time that this drops, it will be 4 weeks to the day that Mrs. Minnesota, had her very severe heart attack, and she's in recovery. But I might have a financial heart attack. The bill just came a day before we recorded this. So if you want to head over to the Give Send Go, even to offer prayer or share it or a donation of any amount, we would be grateful for that, because we are in a position of a lot of lost income and some massive bills coming in, and it would be helpful to us at that time. So the link to the Give Send Go will also be in the description of the video. And so now this is an episode of season 3 of Libertarian Lowdown. I started this by bringing in Spike Cohen very first season, and hadn't really, I knew I had a lot in common with libertarian philosophy. I knew I was not a Republican. I'm definitely not a Democrat. But I had walked away from my Republican roots because Republicans no longer represented me. There's a story about Ronald Reagan when he was governor from California. Think about that. Ronald Reagan was governor of California. Some of you don't even know who Ronald Reagan is. That he left the Democrat Party, and he had made the comment that he left the Democrats, but they had left him first, and that's why he became a Republican. And if you're familiar with Spike Lee's biopic of Malcolm X, there's a scene in there where Denzel Washington, by the way, probably one of Denzel Washington's top performances, really, is in that movie. And there's a scene where he's relaying a speech that Malcolm X delivered, and he has said in that speech that, like, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us. The Republican Party, I didn't leave it; it left me, and then it was also a rock that landed on me. Is really what it is. It's that's why the series exists, not the channel, but the series on the channel exists for these conversations. And the conversation today that we're going to be having with Sonja, I had to ask her before because I knew I was going to say her name wrong if I didn't. I'd call her something, and And then she'd be very gracious and not say a word throughout the whole thing. And then somebody would contact me afterwards and go, by the way, you said her name wrong the entire time. Because that's how my fan base goes. They love to rub it in when I screw up. That's why I just don't give them any opportunities. But we're going to talk about agorism. And we're going to talk about agorism and an agorist, a strong proponent of agorism, who also then ran for office. And we had a brief little chuckle about that before we started recording. If you don't know what agorism is, pause here, go look it up real quick on Wikipedia, and then forget everything that you read there. And also open up, just really kind of just have your voice search on your device, because I know that there are going to be terms that are going to be dropped because they're helpful, and you're going to want to make note of them because Sonja is an expert on this topic. And when you talk to anybody, especially through Twix, I call it Twix, Twitter, X, Twix. When you talk to anybody who's in the know, who runs in these circles, the reality is there's not a much better proponent for agorism and the agorist lifestyle than Sonja. And I strongly recommend that you follow the link to her X Twix account and pay attention to what she does. So without any more worthless rambling on my part, hello. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for waiting while I rambled on needlessly for 7 minutes to, just build audience, because they're really here to see you. So thanks for doing
Yeah,
this.
thanks so much for having me on.
We've been talking about this for a year, but
A
or a little
while.
longer. Like the first time I reached out to you, you had some family, like I think it was some medical stuff going on. And then you ran for office, you complete hypocrite, you.
Yeah, that's me.
You ran for House, U.S. House?
Yeah, for a
Yeah.
congressional seat here in Oregon.
Yeah. How'd that go?
It was pretty wild. I mean, it was a brief thing. So we didn't have our nominating convention for the state Libertarian Party here in Oregon until July. So I was like, okay, we'll have a couple months to just kind of bust it out and see what we can do. It was a really good opportunity to do a pressure campaign. Both the Democrat and the Republican parties here in Oregon are awful, as they are in probably most places. But it's like evil begets evil type of situation. And here we kind of feel like we can influence the Republican Party a lot more than Democrats. Like on the West Coast, the Democrats are so far away. They're so lost that we're like, all right, let's try and like influence these guys a little bit. I was asked to run. I was like, this sounds weird and fun. I'll cancel everything I'm doing for the next couple of months and run for office and just kind of feel it out and see what it's like. And it was a really good experience overall. And we had the effect that we wanted to have. And yeah, it was just good perspective too on just how the system runs. I like to get in it sometimes and try and understand it more so that when I talk about it, I feel like I have more to stand on.
Yeah, I made the comment before we started that who was it? I think it was somebody in Nevada was running and they're an anarcho-capitalist, and somebody was making a big deal about them running as an anarcho-capitalist. Oh no, you know what? It might have been Forest Mommy. It might have been Jessica
Oh, was
who
she
ran
running?
for. She ran. Was it for city council or something in Arvada?
Oh, wow.
And somebody found out that she's pretty much, like she doesn't make any bones about not only being a libertarian, but really, being an anarcho-capitalist. And somebody's like, "Oh yeah, look at the anarcho-capitalist running for office." And I'm like, it's so we can dismantle the system, folks. It's easier to take it apart from the inside.
Right. And I mean, I got the same thing. They're like, wait, you're an agorist. And that is like a complete rejection of all of the systems and trying to create parallel systems, not get into the system. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's a good point. That you're not wrong. But at the same time, the echo chamber is where great ideas die. And I'm kind of sick of being in the echo chamber. Let's see what happens when we go into the political realm where everyone wants to talk politics right now. It's a national conversation. That's what people want to talk about. It's an election year. This is a great opportunity to kind of use that platform and see if we can reach a lot more people and kind of infect them with our ideas. And that's exactly what happened, and what happens every single time.
Well, you know, and it's funny too how you're so right that everybody wants to talk politics, and we still keep having people tell us, but you don't talk about it in polite company. I'm like, this is the U.S. There's no polite company there's no
I mean,
polite
it's
company anymore. Like,
yeah, it's systemic. It's embedded in everything we do, like every purchase you make at the store. And the more that politics are affecting things, the more people want to talk about it.
I do. I don't know. I think we're going to cause some sort of cognitive dissonance here. I have to do this because we were supposed to start recording a lot sooner, and then I got delayed doing, like, non-professional media personality stuff. And and I sent you the link to oh gosh, where is it now? I can't. That's weird. I
Is it the
sent you a
left
link to my chicken streaming.
Yeah.
I
Is it not in there anymore?
And I can't. It's no. I closed my YouTube link, or my YouTube, because I had it up on YouTube and not through StreamYard, and I closed the. It's still streaming, but I closed the YouTube. So I was going to put it up and go to prove that I'm also an agorist. I am bucking the system by
Yeah.
flaunting my illegal backyard chickens in
It's just,
my
simple things.
on my YouTube channel. Which, by the way, my chickens are illegal. My city has told me I have to get a permit now. They've sent me 3 letters.
Oh, really? Wow. A
Yeah.
permit to have chickens. Wow. That's a
Oh, this is why people need to be involved in the politics, sister, is because they want me to get permission from my neighbors before I can get permission from the city.
right. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
getting permission from the neighbors is like, that's how it should be done, right? Like the neighborhood should be able to get together and be like, hey, let's, who wants chickens? Oh, you want chickens? Like, without bringing in the government. But of course, the government wants to get its little fingers into everything.
well, they want me to get the permission from the neighbors, a written letter from the neighbors that I can then present to the city along with the application fee, and then maybe or maybe not grant me the permit because they don't like me right now.
A
So
permit to have chickens. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. That's really
I bet you have a permit for every animal that you have.
every single one. Yep. The government has a little tracking device on them. They come and check on them. I say, hey, government, come on over. That's fine. Thank you, government, for helping me take care of these animals and keeping me safe from them.
Yeah, well, nothing worse than a rabid goose. So you haven't always been an agorist. This is not you didn't grow up like mom and dad teaching you about agorism.
No, I actually thought I came up with it on my own. So we started the family farm.
Yeah, let's do that. Tell me about who you were before and how, and a little bit how you got there.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think it's an important part of the journey of getting to know what agorism is, and then give us a definition of it that's not a Wiki, because I know you know it better than Wikipedia does. So
yeah, so 13 years ago, we started my family farm down in Southern Oregon. And we just started with a couple milk cows. We realized that my mother could drink the milk. And so we're like, well, this is great. And then we realized it was really hard to get. And we're like, well, that's weird. And we're already
you mean she had no problem with raw milk?
No problem with raw milk whatsoever. Yeah,
you guys are the reason the Portlandia episode about raw milk happened, aren't you?
I don't think maybe. I mean,
have you seen it?
Which episode is that?
They have an entire episode just about raw milk and how illegal it is.
I don't know if I've seen that one. The one I always think of the most is the one with the chicken where they end up in a cult.
Oh, because they keep asking about the chicken at the restaurant?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh.
I'll have to look up
Rabbit
the
Trail.
One
yeah, we'll have to find it together. So and I'll send it to you if you don't find it first.
I want to see that.
Anyway, so you guys start a family farm 13 years ago. Mom can drink the milk. Now, were you still at home then?
I moved back home when I had my first kid. So I
Okay.
was 21
All right.
and we lived in Corvallis and we had a recording studio. But my parents were kind of, we were already starting to kind of be like question things. We got really into high dose vitamin C, and we had some issues with the pharmaceutical companies with my stepdad and his children, their medical issues over the years. So we were already starting to like kind of go down a very fringe rabbit hole at the time. So we were open and available to all these concepts. So then we start looking at raw milk and we're like, why is it so hard to get? Why is like when we look it up online, there's all these negative things. Like we already kind of distrust the government. And then we just got super into it. We started the farm, Helios Farms down in Southern Oregon, and just started getting cows. And we researched Joel Salatin and his regenerative farming was a huge influence on everything that we do. So we implemented all of his ideas on the farm. And then I was there on and off for quite a few years, helping manage it and run it. And then I met my husband, and we decided for his work, we were just going to move up to Portland for a couple of years. And, you know, this is 2019. So like Portland is like funky, weird, and wild. It would just be like a weird situation, but maybe kind of fun.
The dream of the 90s is Alive in Portland as their song.
Yeah, not anymore. The 90s has died officially.
It's
a horrible, gross death.
Oh gosh, I knew we were gonna have fun. I did not realize it would start this soon. This is more fun than talking to Horton.
Oh no way. Well, actually, to rewind a little bit, so getting involved with the farm, like I'd always kind of considered myself liberal, I guess. Like I wasn't registered. I was actually trying to look up my registration records. I don't think I'd really voted in anything. I was just very uninterested in politics. And then I started realizing that it was illegal for me to sell a ham that we produced on the farm to my neighbor. And I just thought that was wrong. And I was interested in homeschooling my kids. So I was kind of discovering this whole vibe for myself. And then one day I was driving in the car.
So you were more hippie than you were more on the hippie end of it than you were on the anti-government.
Yeah, I guess.
You were anti-government, but from kind of and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but just kind of like you would have been comfortable with the people that I went to the University of Montana with, who were walking around in patchouli and wearing Birkenstocks all the time.
I mean, I always had like a punk rock background, like anti-establishment. Oh, yeah. So I was a little more like, had a little bit more of an edge. I like to think, okay. But
no, that's perfect. That's exactly like that. It's just, I think it's important to how you ended up where you were. And also at the same time, how alike a lot of us in the movement are, having come from completely different anti-authoritarian perspectives.
Right. It's really fascinating getting the backstory on everyone and being like, wait, what was your like trigger moment? Like, what was like the moment where like that switch flipped for you? And so I had like this punk rock background during like my high school, and I hitchhiked across the country and hopped trains and lived in New Orleans for a while. And like, I just did a bunch of crazy stuff. So I already kind of had a certain vibe in my life before I started having children and had to stop doing those things.
Before your children grew you up.
Yeah, rapidly. It was the best thing in my life ever. And it put everything to perspective. It's like, oh, you know, we want to grow wholesome food and have good nutrition. All of these systems are breaking down. The pharmaceutical industry seems to be, you know, hell bent on making everyone really sick.
Yeah.
So that was really like the big motivating force was my children. And we actually named the family farm after my firstborn, my son, Helios. So that was like the big catalyst for everything. And so I was slowly having these awakenings, but didn't care about politics still. And then I was driving one day and I was like, I wonder what's on AM radio. And I start listening to it. And there's this guy going on about homeschooling and small government and like, yeah, you should be, I think it was something about farms too. And you should be able to like raise your own food. And I was like, what am I listening to? Like, yeah, I agree with all of this. And then it was it was, and it was like, you're listening to Rush Limbaugh. And I was like, I'm becoming a conservative. Oh no. And in retrospect, like Rush Limbaugh and I identify probably on very, very little. However, it was this moment for me to realize that I was no longer identifying with even remotely anything on the left, that all of a sudden I was open to listening to people on the right. And I was like, oh, what do they have to say? Instead of just being like, oh, well, they're just crazy, old, bad people. So anyways,
So
it was just
so
like
you are the female version of Shane Gillis.
oh gosh.
In the
Oh
you know
man.
who that is, right?
Yeah, a
He's the
little less
stand-up
crass
comedian.
maybe.
Well, no, I don't mean you're crass, but just that whole he makes so many jokes about how he's turning more and more into a Republican every day, you know, like
Yeah.
and but yours went like beyond
Yeah.
republicanism, like to actual liberty, not
It was just like an opening moment for me to be like, oh, other people have other things to say. I'm curious what everyone has to say. So then, like, the information door opened, being like, I'm going to take in information from everything. And I'm not going to just take what the media says, because I didn't realize at the time how bad the media was. I'm not going to just take whatever the media says and be like, okay, that's what defines these things. I'm going to open myself up to all of it and take it in and then sort it out myself. And so that was a big moment. Anyways, fast forward, my husband and I moved up to Portland with our 2 kids, and he was starting his carpentry contractor work. And let's see. Yeah, I was pregnant with our 3rd, and it was 2019. And then I had my daughter in March 2020. So I remember the moment my husband came inside, he came home from work and was like, did you hear about this virus thing that's happening? And I was like, yeah, they do this every couple of years. It's swine flu, bird flu, and then, SARS. Like, it's always something. And he's like, no, I think this is like a little different. Like, people are like, seems a little different. I was like, nah,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. I think that your response was basically, you know, what mine was. I was like, something's happening, but how my first response was something's going on, but they're going to back off. And then I
Right.
saw a couple of things in January, and I'm like, nope, this is going to get bad. This is going to
Yeah.
get real bad. And so I was kind of the balance of you and your hubby, because I was going at first like, yeah, okay, here we go again. And then I was like, oh no, this is going to be really ugly. I started warning people that I worked with, because I worked at the sheriff's office at the time, and I was started warning people, you guys better be prepared. This is not going to be pleasant. And they all laughed at me. So
I truly did not realize what was going to happen with the mass psychosis. Like, I was like, okay, it's a weird virus, but I still believed that people were rational human beings that wouldn't be so impressionable
hmm,
from
hmm.
propaganda.
No,
And
sure.
so I had like my little channels on Facebook. So I was already starting to get information about things through different channels. Like, I have always like been, I guess we're called anti-vaxxers now, but I've always been, you know, questioning like the narrative on anything medical whatsoever. So I was already on that kind of level with things. And so I was able to get information. Like, I saw the Great Barrington Report when it first came out. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, this is great, you guys. Look at this. Like, yeah, this is looking really good. Virus is not so bad. We locked down for a couple of weeks and we're like, this is fun. We'll just play some board games. We got the family at home. Like, it's okay. We'll just write it out. And
Just
then
kind of like life like normal for you guys, really.
yeah, and then like a couple weeks went by and they were like, okay, we're good now, right? And then it's like, oh no, you guys are gonna continue. And then I started reading more studies, like, oh, you guys, you don't have to like, COVID doesn't live on surfaces anymore. Remember how they were trying to tell us they lived on surfaces for weeks, and you had to wash all your groceries, which we never did because we weren't psycho. But I started reading that and was like, oh, you guys, this is great news. Like, let's go to the playground. Like, we can, like, it's over. And then I realized that no one wanted it to be over in Portland. Like, everyone was like buckling down harder over all of this stuff. And then I was even printing out QR codes on paper and putting it up like in the neighborhoods on the telephone posts with like links to the Great Barrington Report and like all these different studies.
You were literally the old school Portlandian type person, like was still out there trying to live the Portland lifestyle, and all of the people who Portlandia was about all became anti-Portlandians.
Yeah, I was trying to live the Portland dream. I moved up there and I'm like, what happened, guys? I thought this is how we do things, but apparently
Where
not.
are all the rebels?
Yeah, I went to the playground with the kids. I had my kids and I like took down all the caution tape. We're like, look, guys, we can play. It's cool, right? No one's excited. Everyone's looking at us like we're crazy people. Everyone's masked up. So, anyways,
Well, you might be, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's good crazy, blue crazy. But anyways, I was just increasingly losing my mind in Portland. We didn't know anyone there. I had a newborn. I realized that I didn't know what any of our neighbors looked like for like 6 months because they always had masks on. It was just getting weirder and weirder. And I was gonna either have like a mental breakdown or I needed to do something. And my friend reached out and said, hey, we should do something. We should put on a rally. We should put on a medical freedom rally. Neither of us had ever done it before. And I was like, yeah, let's share the good news. Like, let's tell everyone what we know and then this will stop. We're so naive. And so we put on a rally. We made all these like old school flyers. We put it on social media and we did it at the town hall for Oregon City on May Day, 2021. So this is a full year of it. We're like, okay. And we had like almost 400 people show up. And we didn't know anyone. We didn't know anyone in the political realm. We didn't know activists or any of that. And all these people showed up. And that kind of kicked off this whole medical freedom activism thing that I did for the next 2 years or so. I did a bunch of rallies. I worked with Children's Health Defense and Oregonians for Medical Freedom when I was the political action director for an organization called Free Oregon here in Oregon, obviously. And
it wasn't in Idaho.
Yeah.
You did.
And
it's so bad in Oregon, they had to do the direction of Free Oregon out of Idaho. That's how.
Yeah, right. Almost. It got pretty spicy. We brought in Del Bigtree. We just did a bunch of stuff, and all the while,
at a couple of events with Del. He's a great guy.
Yeah, super great. It was really cool. We had Kevin Jenkins come out. Yeah, and so that got me involved politically because before the whole world could burn down and I really didn't care because we had everything we needed at the family farm, like pretty much self-sustaining for the most part. So I just kind of was like, you know what? I already made the right choices for me and my family. Why do I need to talk to anyone about these things? Why do I need to convince anyone of my viewpoints? Like everyone can come to it on their own. I'm just going to do my thing and make the right decisions for me. But then I got involved in the political realm and realized the importance of sharing ideas and connecting with people and all the stories that people would tell me or any sort of influence anything I shared or did had on their lives. And that was positive. So that kind of kickstarted my whole political journey. And then fast forward again, I did I worked on a campaign, a gubernatorial campaign. It's the one time I switched my registration from Libertarian to Republican for one voting cycle for a race for governor here. And that was incredibly eye-opening and like a major black pill, like such a black pill. Like it burnt me out so hard because I was working on like a grassroots, pretty libertarian leaning conservative Republican campaign. And the lengths that the Republican Party went to try and destroy any of the grassroots conservatives, like anything other than what like their gross little program was. It was very disturbing and concerning. And so I kind of had this black pill moment.
Same thing here in Minnesota. Same thing.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Yeah. And people really, Republicans are especially like to talk about the Democrats and how gnarly they are and how it's all their fault. And it's like, you guys, like this system is much bigger than that. And they all work together and it's a big old club and none of us are in it. So then
It's funny that you say that, because what I've also realized is that the group that you would think would most align with you as far as how dirty politics are within the Republican Party would be the MAGA people.
Right.
You would think, but they're as dirty as the people that they hate. They absolutely as dirty as the people that they hate. And I've run into that here in Minnesota. It's just, they're talking about, take it back to the Republican Party, and then they use the exact same tactics and the same vitriol and the same
Yeah.
hyperbolic attacks on people who don't agree, like lockstep agree with them. And it's just absolutely like, you are literally the exact problem that you hate in the other people. You just want the power. That's all it
100%.
is. You just want the power. That's all.
Well, and politics is such a game. Like, if you want to play politics and you want to get into politics, there are negotiations. Like, there are give and take. You have to sacrifice some of your principles. Like, no one stays intact through that. If you want to influence through that path. So anyways, it was a huge black pill. I was super grossed out by everything. And I was at home and I was just like, what do I do? And I started pulling everything back, being like, why were we protesting at school board meetings, demanding that they change their policies so our kids could go to their public indoctrination centers? Like why were we begging them to let our kids go to their death mills? Like, why were we protesting outside of hospitals to let people in, or to get people out during COVID? Like, why were we using their systems, these archaic, broken, frankly, evil systems, when we should just vote with our dollar and walk away from it and create these parallel systems that are side by side, being like, you know what? Like, we're not going to invest our money and our time and our energy into you guys. We're going to go create our own schools. We're going to go create our own healthcare. We're going to go find our own food. We're not going to eat your food. We're not going to use your schools. We're not going to use your healthcare. Why don't we create this parallel system? So I started coming up with this idea all on my own. And I called my friend, and I had rage quit the Republican Party at this point, and had re-registered as.
Why am I picturing you just throwing a fit and just shredding papers?
Yeah, it kind of was. I was like, I'm out of it. Left all my groups. I was like, all of you are awful. Went back to the Libertarian Party, and I called my friend who was the chair at the time for Libertarian Party, and I was like, I have this idea. Like, what do you think about this? And I described everything I just said to you, and he's like, yeah, it's called agorism. I was like, oh, it's already a thing. That's even better. I don't want to come up with a brand new thing on my own. This is awesome. So then I got I think the first one I read was a New Libertarian Manifesto by Konkin.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped kind of round out my understanding of it a lot more.
Folks, we will have her recommendations for books, reading, and listening. Well, actually, we'll get to her listening recommendations at the end. As you guys know, with my Libertarian Lowdown, I like to ask my Libertarian guests their top listens and top reads. But all of her suggestions will be in the description of the video at the end. So go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you. I just wanted everybody to go, what book was that?
Yeah, totally. So then I was trying to look at how to apply that to my life, and I got involved with a farm up here near Portland. We moved to that, into the RV. I still spend quite a bit of time at my family's farm down in Southern Oregon. That's where all the butchery and stuff comes from, is from when I'm there. And then I was also doing butchery and working on the farm, helping manage my friend's kind of hobby farm just outside of Portland for about 2.5, 3 years. And so in the meantime, I was like, okay, let's build these systems. Like people need to have skills in order to kind of overcome any fear of the future. Like, with the way that things are going, up and down, it's a roller coaster with politics. At the end of the day, if you know how to butcher your own meat or grow your own food, or if you know small engine repair, you are an asset to the community. No matter what, literally anything can happen. You're going to be able to find a community. You're going to be able to be useful. You're going to be able to be helpful. So that kind of became my main focus. I started an organization called Oregon Liberty Network, which was focused on that, specifically finding farms, and not necessarily just creating a list for people to go and buy food, which is important, but I wanted to help steer people away from the idea of just being a consumer and actually being an active participant in the whole lifestyle. And
it starts simple, folks. First, you get backyard chickens, then you're trading things with people. It's terrifying. I'm trading for elk meat and like, hey, you got eggs? Yeah, I got elk meat. Hey, you want some raw milk? I can get you some raw milk. Like,
yeah, it's a slippery slope. It really is.
Yeah. Next thing you know, you're building a bunker.
Yeah. No, it happens it accelerates really quickly. Like next thing you know, you're just like a rabid extremist, like ANCAP, like just getting worse. It's going to get so much worse.
I think Monica Perez is running some of your Oregon circles. I know that she's visited some people in Oregon, some of their farms, to take a look at the agorist lifestyle, because she has spoke very highly of the movement. And I know you know who Monica is, but
yeah.
But she's got some friends that are kind of in that same network up there with you. So
she should come
interesting.
out check out the family farm.
Yeah, we will. I will. I'll actually tell her to reach out to you guys, because she loves that kind of stuff. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Not that Monica has to listen to me, but anyway. So you're building all of this up. You get your Freedom Network going, and you've discovered that your bright idea, which, as bright as it was not yours originally. It was original, but you found out somebody else had it originally before you did. And
like well fleshed out too, thank goodness.
And you didn't have to build it all on your own. Did you run into people who were like, you sound crazy, that like that's like, or were you starting to like run into a lot more people that were like, no, something needs to change?
A combination of the two, but the main, like the people who were like, oh, that's crazy, they had legitimate argument, which was like, I'm a single mom. I can't afford, like I have to go work. That's the way that the system's set up. I can't homeschool my kids. I have to put them in school. So I am at the mercy of the schools, or I can't afford what is like niche meat. That's just out of reach for me financially.
Right.
And so people made these points. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. That's why I was like, we need to focus on the community. Like, it's not just about individual resiliency. There's this whole myth that you can just go out into the woods with a family and like have a little cabin and survive there and like grow and raise everything you need to survive. You're probably going to starve. That's literally never how it worked. The community is incredibly...
We can't all be Thomas Massey. So
oh, we might wish, but yeah, like it's never worked that way. The community interaction part of it is so important. It's also the most terrifying part to the government. The last thing they want is the community coming together, and working together to create that resiliency. That's why whenever they see that starting to happen, they go out of their way to try and shut that down. That's why, you buy a piece of property, you can't build multiple living units on it. There's loopholes you can exercise, but the last thing they want is for you to build a community on your own land and be self-sustaining. And so that was, so those are some things that I was trying to figure out. So I was like, okay, like we need to focus on, how to build these homeschool communities that are self-sustaining, that everyone is supporting each other, but it's not costing you a ton of money, because all these, out of COVID, all these little, I forgot they were called, like little homeschool pods were popping up, but it was kind of like a caricature of itself. Because like one of them I was looking at, they wanted, I think it was like $700 a month for my two kids to put them in this sweet little homeschool pod. I liked what they were teaching. It sounded like a great thing.
Was it like a homeschool co-op?
Yeah, like a homeschool co-op. And a lot of those popped up during COVID, which was a great thing because it was an alternative thing to just having to do it on your own.
But who's got $700
But I was
at
like,
the end of
I
the month to give to some. I'm like, I don't know. Like,
right. And that's also like besides the point, but I also get it. Like people, your time is money and value and all of that. So I was trying to figure out ways to work around that. And then also supporting like the medical fields and, which gets a little bit trickier, but like alternative healthcare. But that also a
which
lot of
they hate.
they
They
really
hate it.
hate, they really hate that one. That one's a little trickier, but what I found was the majority of our healthcare issues and our needs with healthcare can be avoided if we are eating, like if we have proper nutrition in the first place. So I was like, okay, let's bring it all the way back to the food. Let's just focus on the food and then have everything kind of come out from there. And so finding farms around Oregon that were, not vaccinating their cows, not using antibiotics, doing regenerative farming practices, rotating their chickens, rotating their hogs, having their hogs in the forest, not feeding soy and corn, just starting there. And then a lot of these farms, they need help. They need sweat equity. They need people to come there and work on the farm. And they're more than happy to trade your labor or whatever skills you have in exchange for food. So that helped kind of eliminate some of the cost barriers for people that wanted to have this food, and then so on and so forth. So it was really just about, I just started focusing on getting people onto farms to make anything happen.
Well, and I love that you point that out, that a lot of people have this mentality of, oh, I can just go do it all by myself. Like, you can't. Like, if you're really good at animal husbandry, you're probably going to suck at planting crops. Like, not necessarily, but it's just it's that everybody's got that niche that they're good at. Like
Right.
my niche is I like to sit and talk to people, which doesn't put food on the table. So
No, but it's a
I'm I'm
valuable part of
I'm
the
I,
community.
I'm gonna fail as an agorist because I'm gonna be like, hey, I will interview you for a free steak.
I mean, like that's the whole point too, is that you can't do everything on your own.
Exactly.
It's impossible. So people are going to specialize in things.
Yes.
And then if you have the barter and the trade involved, um, then it's going to be able to be self-sustaining. Like, no, not everyone's going to want your pork, but maybe that guy over there, you really want his chicken, but he doesn't want pork, but maybe you find someone else that wants your pork and then they trade and so on and so forth. Or you can create your own currency. My folks at Helios Farms created their own currency called Moolah Coin, which is a commodity based in milk. And they use a blockchain. And so they convert everyone's money that they spend on products at the farm into Moolah Coin. And then you can have a stockpile of Moolah Coin that you get to use to buy any of their products. And then they actually have people outside of the farm now that are trading Moolah Coin for mechanic work and metal work and things like that. So there's a lot of potential there. And they keep the price of milk at a flat rate no matter what, because they recognize that it was a high value item that was never going to go out of fashion or style. It's the most most nutrient dense food that you can have. And there's always going to be
besides winged butt nuggets.
Yeah, besides that.
So
those are some ways.
I would love to talk to your folks sometime.
You should. They're if you think that I'm radical at all, they've taken it to the next level.
I don't actually.
They're very
I'm
cool.
also people think I'm radical. Well, that's actually one of the reasons why I was running late for this, and you'll get a kick out of this. As a avowed anarcho-capitalist, I still went and took part in the voting process this year, but I was recording it, and two of the election judges jumped me like as I was in line and tried to kick me out and bar me from voting for trying to record, and actually called the cops, local deputies, on me. And I just got the packet. I requested all the data, and I just got the packet, and there was stuff on there I had no idea they recorded themselves. The deputies had audio mics. They didn't have actual body cams. They had audio mics, and I was listening to these two election judges and other election judges trying to figure out a way to keep me from being in there with a camera. And
Wow.
I was listening to all of that as I was trying to mop the floor and get the ham ready for dinner for tonight. And
Yeah.
the missus came back from
Wow.
something because she's trying to get back to her life, and she's just like, I have to ask. And she's been with me this entire time. She still doesn't really understand me, in that respect. She's like, why would you record? Why would you record? And I'm like, why wouldn't you? Like,
I mean, why
and like,
not? Like,
and that opened up a door for me to talk about the reality of, I don't trust anybody in government. I don't trust them. I shouldn't say anybody. There are a few out there that I do, but by and large, you don't trust them, which is what drives most of us to do anything that we do. And it goes to you getting to that black pill point of, this whole thing is rigged. It's just stupid. It's ugly. It's not worth the time. Let's break away from the system. And also at the same time recognizing that, yes, we want to break away and we want to be independent and run these parallel economies to the approved economy. But none of this is going to, in and of itself, as parallels, are not going to be enough if we can't get more people to want to take part in the parallel economy. And to do
right.
that, we have to move into the mainstream to some degree. And
Yes.
some of that's going to mean running for U.S. House, running for mayor, running for city council. Shout out Forest Mommy. But and being willing to take the slings and the arrows of, well, I thought you were an anarchist. Why would you do that? Well, it's because I have a message. And I think that's something that hurts the libertarian movement, the agorist movement, the anarcho-capitalist movement. We talk so much about how the Republicans and the Democrats exist in an echo chamber, but we do too.
Oh yeah.
The
Oh
vast
yeah.
majority of us are so tizzy that we don't talk to anybody that's not as tizzy as we are. And it's just true. It's just,
It's
we are
highly problematic. Yeah.
oh,
I,
we do. And I get that. Sometimes somebody will be saying, well, if somebody doesn't agree with you, you label them right away. And I'm like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do. I'm not going to lie. I do. There are times, and that's me recognizing, yeah, we have, like you were saying, that echo chamber. And I was actually really impressed when I saw that you were running for office, because I know how hard it is to step outside of that echo chamber and put yourself out there, because I do it and it does not end well most of the time. It ends in attacks. It literally ends in attacks. So, props to you for being willing to take those slings and arrows. So
yeah, I found that I didn't get that much pushback actually. I think that the conservatives here in Oregon are they're really starting to lean more towards at least some libertarian ideas, just because things are so bad here, and there's such a divide between the establishment class of Republicans here in Oregon that actually run the party, and then the conservative grassroots people that are just trying to like survive and like build a livelihood and take care of their families. And they realize that a lot of their problems are going unanswered. So I feel like most of them were actually pretty receptive. The ones that were the most mad are the ones that were mad that I was pushing out a Republican from Congress, from a seat in the House, even though I would point out that she votes completely opposite of Republican values the majority of the time. I'm like, you guys like the term rhino. She's a rhino. She literally votes with the Democrats on everything bad. She votes for every single, increasing the war state. She votes for every single foreign aid package. Like, she's literally looting your pockets. And then she crosses the
yes,
aisle
but
for
she's
identity
a
politics.
Republican.
But she has an R next to her name, and this is a +2 seat. And I'm like, well, like, come on, guys. Like, you're never going to get the change that you want and you complain about all the time if you don't send a message. And no, I'm not going to win. But it does, like, those votes do send a message to the system. And the whole point is that they need to run better candidates, and you guys need to pressure them to run better candidates in the future and not just the same old, same old.
That's what
But
Rebecca Whiting. That's what Rebecca Whiting did here, and she's a lot like you. She's got a farm way up in the north part of Minnesota, and I'd love for. I don't know if you guys have ever interacted, but you two would get along famously just because you have a lot of the same mindset. And she's a party chair for Minnesota, and she ran for Senate seat because in Minnesota you have to run a statewide candidate in every state. You have to, every time there's a statewide office open, you have to run a candidate. So basically every 2 years you have to run a statewide candidate to keep your party.
We have the same thing here in Oregon. Yeah, we ran 4 or 5 candidates.
And so she ran for U.S. Senate against Amy Klobuchar. And if you know anything about politics, yeah. And then the Republicans ran this hack job, Royce White, who says a lot of stuff and it sounds good, but it's just shallow and empty. And so many Republicans were mad at her. You're going to cause Royce White his seat. I'm like, dude, he's not going to beat Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota. He's just not. Yeah. He's not going to beat Amy Klobuchar.
Spoiler, Yep. And it's like we are actually pushing, like we're able to push these parties, especially in some of these districts, to change their methods.
And that's what Rebecca did. She got 55,000 votes in the state of Minnesota, which is not even anywhere near the threshold automatic ballot access. But she got 55,000 votes, and Royce White still lost by 25%. So
yeah,
her impact was huge on a foundational level, but minuscule in actually hurting the Republican, literally minuscule in hurting the Republican. But it's because there are people predominantly, kind of like what you guys have in Oregon, but predominantly a lot more people are willing to look at libertarians that will talk to them and discuss their values with them and vote for those libertarians than ever were before. And we're starting to see Democrats now do the same thing.
Yeah.
To really
100%.
Look and go, I don't know that this party actually represents me at all, if it ever did. So, like I said, I was just really encouraged to see you make that, because I know that's a sacrifice, even if it's only for a few months. I know how exhausting the process is.
Yeah, I definitely did not fully realize what a sacrifice it'll be. And I'm like, well, I already do this all the time anyways. I'm always talking to people and going to events. Like, it won't be a big change. And it's like, I think it's also just the nature of the thing. It's just exhausting. It's like you're up against such an evil, dark thing that it just starts to kind of suck the life out of you. And it's like, why is this so hard? But I did a forum in a little town called Silverton with some other candidates. And this was a big wake up thing for me as far as leaving the echo chamber, right? Because in the echo chamber, you're talking to other libertarians and ANCAPs and anarchists, and everyone's like, yeah, totally, like guns, like we're in debt, foreign aid, stop doing that. Wars are bad. And you're like, yeah, okay, go team. This is what everyone thinks, obviously. No, I go to a forum and I'm talking to mostly conservatives, mostly over the age of 50. And I probably repeat that we're $35 trillion in debt, like 3-4 times. And every time I'm just met with like they don't even, it's not like
they're on their way out. They're like, I'm 54. I'm on the last quarter of my life. I'm like, they're
just, and not trying to judge them or anything, but I just realized like it was not messaging that was going to make any impact on them whatsoever. And so then it's like, okay. So I start talking about like the price of gas and the price of groceries, and everyone's like, yes. I see people nodding. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Here's
my inroad.
But like I'm using terminology like, counter revolutionary economics, and people are just like, chirp like crickets. And so having like kind of changed the messaging a little bit to try and impact people, and not just
you learn as much as they do.
Not just like hit people with like, anarchist libertarian talking points that are they're not quite ready to register that, or they haven't heard it enough times, like maybe a couple more times of hearing it, it'll start to resonate. Right. And then like talking about guns, talking about foreign aid, war. And, it was just I left that forum realizing like, wow, we have a lot of work to do, But every time we do this, I think with branding, it's like you need to see the name of a brand 5 times, 8 times in order for it to stick in someone's head. So what I'm seeing happening with Libertarian Party, and especially the influence that they've had on this last election or elections around the country, I see that as a net win, because I am seeing libertarian ideas and talking points and terms being regurgitated on the national scale from people that I would never have heard those terms before. I see people loosely talking about war hawks, just like throwing the term out, like very establishment Republicans saying things like that. So that to me seems like our ability to influence the culture is a lot more effective than just trying to influence politics by running these races. However, it's hard to influence the culture without entering the political realm, or at least being in those circles or adjacent.
I knew that's where you were going to go. I could feel it, because that's what I keep telling people. You brought up a perfect example of this is you brought up getting involved in public schools. Why are we fighting to have our kids in this place where we really don't want them indoctrinated anyway? And I got involved in a lot of the school board stuff in Minnesota to cover it from a media perspective, but also to kind of get in there and show these people the things they needed to really be focusing on and thinking about. And if they really are serious about making changes, that it's more than just getting the mask mandates dropped from your school, or the jab requirements dropped from your school. It's about you getting involved on the school board and taking control of your school district back. And
Right.
you can't just show up and like in Minnesota, they had a movement called Let Them Play. These parents were just outraged that their kids weren't going to be able to take part in their senior year of whatever sport they took part in. That my kid's a quarterback on the football team, and now he's not going to have his senior year as a star quarterback. Like, okay, who gives a damn ultimately? Like, this is like that's what you're worried about. You're worried that your little Johnny or your little Susie, whatever sport they're involved in, or cheer captain, they're not going to have that experience. That's what you're concerned about. And so they got involved in all of the freedom protests and all of the medical
Right.
rallies and all that. They got involved until they got their way, and their kids were allowed to play their sports. And then they quite literally took their ball and went home and dropped it.
That's why I was
And
kind of sad when the lockdowns ended and the mandates went away. It was like everyone's like, "Okay, guys, good job, fought for
we did it.
freedom.
No, you
Go back
literally didn't
home
do
now,
anything.
never do anything ever again." And I'm like, "Where did you guys all go? We had so much momentum. We were doing so many amazing things."
And that's what I was telling school board parents. Like, okay, if you insist on keeping your kids in the public schools, then you have to get involved in the school board. It can't just be show up and scream and holler about mask mandates. It has to be starting to ask these hard questions about what are they actually teaching in your school. And that's why I got involved with that. Was we homeschooled our kids from start to finish. Like,
Nice.
just started back in, we won't even go to how far back that goes.
Yourself.
Early 2000s. So my kids are all adult. Well, they claim to be adults now, but I have grandchildren, so
Oh,
I guess we have to say they're adults. But
yeah.
so we were, I didn't pay any attention to what was going on in the school district. I don't care. I don't care, other than they take my money for taxes, and so I'm always the guy voting no on the school board referendums. And
Yeah.
yet people who share a lot in common with me will go, oh, we got to get the school referendum passed. The kids have got to have a new building. And I'm like, do they? Like, why not just educate them somewhere else? And boy, that's a hard conversation to have with people who do predominantly agree with you on so many other things.
Right. That's one thing I've learned, is to not like beware of the almighty pedestal or like soapbox of like, higher than thou type of thing, being like, well, I homeschool, so everyone else can homeschool too. It's like, you don't actually know everyone's situation. Yes, it's the ideal ththing. But if you're not going out of your way to help kind of create systems that are able to bring people in and support them, because it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to go out there and try and homeschool your kids by yourself, especially if you don't have a community. Like if you have a community around you where, you have other activities and social things and field trips and fun stuff, then that's a different situation than just being a parent, like parents or a single parent trying to do it because it's the right thing to do, but you're isolated. Like that can be kind of soul crushing sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I've
It can be
definitely
soul crushing when you try to explain a math problem and you don't know math. That's soul crushing. But
yeah. Yeah, especially like my middle schooler, how old is he? He's 13. He's in like algebra 1 now. He's super advanced math, and it's like I can't teach you any of this stuff. Like I have no idea.
that's my feeling.
And if you're homeschooling, then you have to go hire a tutor or something online, and it's just. But anyways, I think it is the ideal system. It is what we should all strive to have is more of a homeschool situation, not be reliant on these schools. But like you're saying, if you got to put your kids in school, then at least be involved in those schools because you can actually make a huge difference because we were able to make quite a bit of difference. And don't just wait till things get so bad that you have to go there and yell and protest and cry and scream. Like that's usually what the government wants. Like I did so many protests. I did so many rallies. And at one point I remember saying, I will never throw another rally or protest because it's literally just cathartic screaming into the void. It really accomplished very little. It created a sense of community. Like people got together, they'd see the same people, they would feel solidarity. That was positive. But at the same time, it is the least threatening thing to the government ever because you're still begging them for whatever you're begging them for. And you go out there, you scream all day and you pat your back, okay. And then you're done working for whatever, thing that you're trying to accomplish. What's way more threatening to the government is just to create situations where you're like, we don't really need you guys. Like, we're going to vote with our dollars. We're going to kind of go over here and do our own thing. And like, you go ahead and do all that crazy stuff you're doing, but we don't really want a part of that. So, no, thank you. And I think that's a lot more threatening to the government.
Well, I don't want to have you keep you for too terrible long. We both have lives, and you clearly have a lot more going on. I have to go collect hidden eggs. I had a hen that got someplace where she wasn't supposed to be, and now laid a bunch of eggs that I have to literally crawl through like a Vietnamese tunnel rat to get to them.
Easter every day.
It's like, very much. So agorism is not like, I think a lot of people who do hear it, even within the movement, hear about agorism and they think agorism is strictly you living rural, kind of like you've already referred to, is you living rural and having like 8 or 10 cows and 3 or 4 pigs or whatever the case might be, and you just kind of being really self-sufficient. But agorism is not just the agricultural approach to life. It is all about the market. And and that's actually the term agorism comes from agora, which is the Greek word for open market or open air. And it's a weird thing about Koine Greek from my Christian side of my life. But its root is in that marketplace of trading that literally was people having their own crops, their own livestock, and their own productivity, and exchanging that stuff centuries ago for goods or goods for services, and not for money, but literally exchanging. And so you don't have to, in the agorist model, you don't have to like pick up your family and move them onto a homestead like 35 miles away from where you are now in the middle of nowhere. You could move towards living an agorist lifestyle while you're still living the life that you live now.
And it's also
understand what it is.
It's also the marketplace of ideas, because the Agora was a place where people came and they would debate, have philosophical debates. They would see their community. Families would come together. There was a lot of play, and just it's a lot about participation. Just participating in your community is agorism. the trading of ideas and goods and commerce and all of that happening within the marketplace. So you can see the microcosm of it all over the place. An agora can be between a couple families, or it can be within a community that's really focused on one thing. And then it can grow from there. So it's not a place like, yes, I think everyone should have like a little chunk of property where they have like a level of resiliency in their family for, what may come. But at the same time, you don't need to have that. It's more about how you interact with the world and how you share your ideas and where you put your time and energy and how much permission you're asking for things. An agorist is not going to willingly ask for permission for anything. And so when you're kind of moving through, when you're using the lens, when you're looking at everything through that lens of like, I'm not going to just willingly give permission or ask if I can do something. I'm just going to do it and try and find ways to not be begging for, the government to come in and be like, yes, you can do that. Oh, okay. Before I, do this part in my house or build a chicken shed in the backyard, I'm not going to go to the government office and be like, hey, can I voluntarily sign up for your permits and for you to like go after me for years? And, you're not going to do that. You're just going to do the thing.
One of my most frequent tags on my chicken streams. Yes, folks, I stream my chickens pretty much all day long now. I just flaunting it. I'm like, yeah, yes, I have chickens. I know, not you, the city. I actually put agorism in a lot of the video stream descriptions. I hashtag agorism because that's exactly it. I'm not asking you permission. Like, this is literally my property. I already have to pay you every year for my property. On top of having to pay my mortgage, I got to pay you so I could continue to live here. Why do I need to ask you permission to do anything? To, renovate a room upstairs and, hang sheetrock for the first time in my life, to take my house back to its, old Victorian style days when it was built. Why do I need to get your permission to do that? I'm gonna fix my deck. Why do I need to get your permission to fix my deck? Why do I need to get your permission to, like, there are places where you have to get permission for certain types of gardens. Like, it's just ridiculous what they want you to do. And so it is so much more than slaughtering, having two calves and slaughtering them at the right time of the year on your property. And because I think that's what it has a lot of people who, when they start to look into it, they run into the people that are super gung-ho, right? Because those are the people that have the TikTok channels that are, is there an agorism TikTok? Is there agorism?
I don't know. I have a TikTok. I just started one. It's not like specifically agorist, but there's a lot of homesteading. I haven't actually looked up the term agorism on there, but I should.
Well, there's spooky talk now, like ghost stories on, like people's haunting experiences on TikTok, and there's witch talk, and there's
a lot of interesting stuff on there. Actually, I've been on TikTok a little more, and I did not realize how many people are actually doing cool things on there. I just thought it was going to be like, young girls doing stupid dances, but there's actually like really cool stuff on there. But
even Mrs. Minnesota finally said to me the other day, she's like, "You probably need a TikTok," and I'm like.
It's a very different audience. I mean, I'm basically just on Twitter, and then I have a little bit of TikTok, and I'm trying to also share to YouTube now, but we'll see where I put my energy. But I did want to, with what we were just talking about, I did want to make the point of the importance of personal responsibility.
Right.
So, yeah, like this is the lens to look at everything, like the agorist lens, which is I shouldn't have to ask permission for anything. I shouldn't have to apply for these permits. At the same time, you are existing within a system that is out to get you and is going to do everything it can to try and make you conform to it. So you do have a decision to make, is saying, how much I have personal responsibility. I might get fined if I do things this way. And there's probably very little that, like, I'm not going to sell people on this idea that, yes, do these things just like this, like a sovereign citizen, right? Do these things just like this, and you're going to be totally protected and the government won't be able to get you. That's a lie.
We've used all the terms that YouTube will use to demonetize this video today.
Oh my gosh. We can
all of them. We've used them all. The anti-vax, COVID.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, it's perfectly fine. I laugh about it these days just because I'm like soft sit, especially, but
Are they still doing that to you? They're still demonetizing, like,
they demonetize. Yeah, like I had Jason Rink on last year. He's the one that did the documentary about one of the guys from J6, and I had him on just to talk about his documentary, and they literally gave me a strike and took the video down.
Well, you can edit all these little bits out if you like.
No, I'm not editing.
I'm
not editing anything. No, my audience loves this stuff. So I went to live streaming because I thought it was easier because then I didn't have to edit. And then I'm like, well, I could still record like it's a live stream and my audience will still interact with, because I sit in the chat. Then I can actually sit in the chat and interact with them. So, which I will invite you to be in the chat, by the way, when we drop this.
Oh, sure thing. That'll be fun.
But do you see agorism growing now because people are starting to understand it more than just being terrified at the idea that they're going to have to all of a sudden become the Wilder family? Like you have to go live on which my daughter will get a kick out of because she's a historical society director in our town, and the big draw here is the Wilders, and the Ingalls lived here in town for a while. So shout out to the Historical Society in Spring Valley. But like, that's a lot of people are like, I don't even know how to bake bread, and you want me to go live on a farmstead somewhere without electricity? I'm not Amish,
Yeah, that's
you don't have to be.
A common misconception is that it's like a very Luddite thing, which I am a bit of a Luddite. Like I love old fashioned, like, wooden and metal tools. Like I'm very disturbed by cryptocurrency and AI and all these things.
Except for the Moo bucks or whatever.
Except for Moola coin, but that's blockchain. It's just written in a ledger, and it's just made up online. But yeah, so I see, like, people's awakening goes through certain levels. So you have someone that's like a very establishment Republican, and then they start to wake up to some of these things aren't quite right and they're misleading us. So then they become MAGA, right? And then they're like, America first. Okay, like that's a great entry point. America first. Right. That's probably going to lead you into starting to ask questions about foreign aid investment. You're going to start asking questions about why we're sending all of our soldiers overseas to die in wars that have nothing to do with us. Maybe you're going to start being opening to defend the guard in your state, right? So it's like a little gateway, little doors that are opening, and then they move into more of like a Tea Party Republican. Exactly, yeah. They move into more of a Tea Party Republican, and then from there they start, they're getting more into a little more two-way for everyone. I want my own battleship. And then they move further and they're like, oh, libertarianism. Now, and libertarianism is starting to make sense. And then they move from that into ANCAP. And then I see agorism actually being the vehicle for anarchism to even be functional whatsoever. Right. Because a bunch of individual anarchists all trying to like live together is not actually that functional if they don't have a vehicle for how they relate to each other, how the market works. And so agorism is kind of the overarching umbrella that all of these systems can exist within at the same time. And so, yeah, I see an awakening happening pretty rapidly with people being open to these ideas. And eventually people are going to start saying, well, since the state is so toxic and through these political methods, we can only remove so much of it, or it's taking too long. People are looking for ways for independently for them to be able to kind of divest themselves from the system. And agorism is a great method for doing that, or at least just encouraging that. And I really hope that more and more people are coming together getting kind of knocking down some of these barriers that have been dividing us, because division is like the number one pathway to collapse of a society. So a lot of those barriers starting to come down, and then agorism actually looks like a really great way for the community to rebuild.
And actually put protections in place for itself, which
Right.
I think there's a misconception about, anarcho-capitalism and, anarchy as it's properly understood, which is really nothing more than against the rule, is that
Right.
if anarchists all get together, then it's pure chaos, and and you're right. If it just only goes so far as there is no, like, somebody down at City Hall telling you how to live your life, then you might have a lot of chaos. But pure anarchy, and not like, well, if we did it right this time, kind of like what the communists say every time they try it. But pure anarchy is you get to decide who you're going to be with, and
Right.
you do come up with rules for that,
Right. It's not
for
no
that
rule.
area.
It's no rulers, but
It's no
it's not
ruler.
no rule.
And then if you decide at some point that you no longer want to live in that group because something about the rules no longer sets well with you, you get to leave. Nobody's going to make you stay.
Right. Right.
Like, and that's when you look at what we have today here in the US alone, this is the most evil form of anarchism, because they get to set the rules no matter what, even when you vote for them or don't vote, like the protest voting versus the protest not voting. You still end up with the same people making the rules, but you don't get to leave.
Right. It's
If
anarcho-tyranny, especially
it's
like here in Portland.
yeah,
It's like complete chaos, but it's manufactured by the state and no one has any
yes,
say, and there's no voluntary association with any of it.
right. Like, if they don't want you to leave, you literally, like, you may not be allowed to leave. And if
Right.
you try to leave, they might throw you in prison for leaving. It's like
Exactly.
anarcho-capitalism and agorism. I really don't like the fact that we're going to eat salamanders here, and I'm going to go someplace where we don't eat salamanders.
Right.
It's not a rule that the community's decided that salamanders need to be eaten. Like, and I'm just using something completely ridiculous because you just don't know what it might be. And when people push back and say, well, but we have to have the government, and I very rarely refer to it government anymore. I always refer to it as the state at all of her levels.
Yeah.
Without the state, we wouldn't have safety. I'm like, really? Is that what you get up for every morning? And you should go, thank God they kept me safe while I slept.
Yeah.
I'm really, like, they posted a guard at my door and had a medical team in my house the entire night so I could sleep soundly knowing that I was going to wake in the morning unscathed. Like, it's literally not how you sleep.
Thank goodness I spent all that money on a local police force for them to get here like an hour after someone's breaking in my house. And they also
and then arrest me for,
and then they arrest me or
self-defense.
shoot me or my dog. And they also took my guns like years ago. So thank goodness for all of that.
They're but now you're safe because they have the guns and you don't. So
right.
You're safe.
Yeah. I'm so glad my dollars go to that.
I'm serious. I would love to talk to your folks.
Okay.
Down at Helios, if you could help me do that, because if you think you're radical but you think they're even more radical, then that would be. Do they use computers?
They do. They do. Yeah.
I would love to do that. I would also love to connect Monica with you and your group, because I know every once in a while she'll make trips to go visit folks. She's really into fermented food right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, my family's farm is all about, we ferment even the feed for the hogs and the chickens. Yeah.
I did fermented feed for the first time this fall.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And Mrs. TC says, that smells, I don't want it in my house.
Well, it smells like oatmeal, like where we are.
It's in my studio. Yeah, but I can smell it in the kitchen. Well, my studio, I have a door on the back of this. It's an addition, and it used to be where we did all our homeschooling, but now it's my studio in my workout room. and I kept it sitting by the door to go outside to the chicken's enclave. And of course, when you ferment it, you can't like seal it super tight because then it might blow up.
Uh-huh.
So of course it's leaking the fermentation gases a little bit every day.
Oh
And
no.
she goes this, I'm like, I can't put it outside because eventually it's gonna freeze.
You could
She's like,
just
I don't
do
want
like
it.
a 24-hour ferment too. Just like do small
I
batches every
yeah,
evening, ferment it, and
so I've decided I'm gonna like go to just a small batch from now on, and because I did like a half of a 5-gallon bucket, and
oh yeah.
they loved it. They absolutely loved it, but the missus did not. So,
That's funny. That's how we started doing it was when we first moved to the farm. We had 5-gallon buckets and we would mix the feed in it in our like kind of entry hall in the house. And we were actually using a wooden spoon to mix it, which was really hard. We did that for way longer than I'd like to admit before we like realized that it was time to upgrade because we had scaled up all of our animals. So we have all these buckets and we're still using the stupid wooden spoon. And then we upgrade to blue totes. We're still using the spoon
the
for
same spoon.
months.
So
I
your
don't know.
upgrade wasn't to something automatic to mix it with. It
No,
was
it's
the
like
blue totes.
incremental changes that take way too long. And then one day we're trying to pick up these huge blue totes full of 50 pounds of feed. We're like, this is so hard. And then we're like, we should put it in the back of the trailer and mix the feed in the back of the trailer. And then we're like, we shouldn't be using a wooden spoon. Maybe we can use a shovel. And then we'd start just mixing straight in the entire tractor bucket. No lifting required. That's one thing with farming is you learn pretty quickly being like, how do I save my back and make everything easier?
Work smarter, not harder. My grandfather
Yes.
and my dad used to tell me. Oh, yeah. They do make concrete mixers that you can put on a drill.
Yeah, I think we might have tried that before,
It
but
might be too aggressive.
I think at this point it's just scaled up so much that it's just we barely mix it nowadays. We just fill it with water. We throw milk in there to ferment it and then leave it overnight and feed it out.
Really? So if that makes that much of a difference in one night of sitting.
Yeah, and like if we want to do a longer ferment, we will, but it's really like a lot of it's mostly just soaking the grains. So there's a lot of whole
Mhm.
grains mixed in. And so we're just trying to open it up so they'll release all the phytic acid, which will make it more digestible for the
Yeah.
pigs and the chickens. And then they're also getting all the whey and all the fat and the protein from the milk mixed in. So they get that supplemented.
Oh, cool. My chickens eat every single table scrap we produce, by the way.
Wow, nice.
Every single table. And
Perfect circle.
they make the best butt nuggets. It I just I have two white Jersey Giants, and then
Oh,
two Barred Rocks, and um, two Buffs, and gosh, I have three I have not been able to identify yet.
did you have little red ones?
Those you might be seeing the Buff Orpington.
Oh, okay.
They're kind of a golden, reddish golden.
I thought I saw you had like Rhode Island Reds, but maybe
No, no, no. But yeah, the eggs that the Jersey Giants lay, they look like somebody's like, "Where'd you get the ostrich?"
they're big. They're big chickens.
They're big, yeah.
They're a good dual purpose breed.
Yeah. No, these will only be
You're
they're
not gonna
only
eat
for.
your
I'm
backyard.
not no, like I'm not quite to that point where I'm raising anything for meat yet. Like I'm gonna try and add quail in the spring.
I
Just
have been looking at quail and thinking about quail quite a bit. I'm pretty anti raising chicken for meat at this point. I think it's a stupid thing that we shouldn't be eating. Totally unsustainable, totally impossible to do on your own. Like the amount of grain it requires to eat some like very privileged little chicken, it's just silly.
but the
But
eggs are so good.
their eggs are so good. And then if they get older and you want to have a stew hen, then that's great. You get chicken. But quail actually seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking about trying to add. Allegedly, quail can mix with chicken pretty safely. Like, no, they don't.
What I've
You
heard.
just gotta just introduce them slowly to each other.
Hmm.
So I have a gal who's gonna hatch me out some quail, and I want the quail eggs
Yeah.
because every
Yeah.
once in a while, when I'm not doing the keto carnivore thing, I wanna hand make ravioli. and I want to do quail egg ravioli.
That sounds really good.
It does, doesn't it?
That does sound really good.
Sounds really good. All right,
Yeah.
so before you go, top 3 books that you would recommend, and it doesn't have to be agorism related, but top 3 books that you would recommend people read that you think are life changing or pivotal.
Oh, well, I think the New Libertarian Manifesto by Konkin is great. Samuel Edward Konkin III, Sec 3 to all the agorists. That's a great primer. He also has a primer. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, which makes me a bad agorist. But that's one I recommend. And then not an agorist book, but I think that it really helps people kind of understand the mental state of America right now is a Conflict of Visions by Thomas Sowell. That one, I remember reading that during COVID and it was just blowing my mind. It's very academic, but once you get into it and you start seeing the parallels with today, it gets very interesting to read. And then the third one, what is that one? Wish I had my bookshelf right here.
I didn't prepare you for this, so.
No, you didn't. There's so many. Also not an agorist book, but I really enjoy The Fourth Turning by Neil Howe, which basically just talks about how we go through cycles as a society and also as a country, but then you can kind of dial that down into like fractals of itself and see how we
Very
go
local.
through loops and patterns and basically everything. And I feel like that book can actually be kind of a hopeful thing, especially if you've taken a bit of a black pill, to be like, oh, this is something that happens. And each time it gets a little bit better, or maybe it gets a little bit worse. And for me, I like it when I can understand, at least like have an idea of why things are happening.
Right.
I want to know why. And as soon as I have, something telling me a little bit of the reason behind things, it gives me comfort. So I recommend that book, especially right now with the kind of precarious situation we're in as a nation and world right now.
This one throws everybody. I'm surprised when people have an answer right off the cuff, and then I'm also not surprised when people are like, I wasn't expecting that. A TV show or movie that you think best represents libertarian ideals or philosophy?
Oh no.
You don't have to if you can. If you're not a big TV show or movie person, that
I
totally
am
makes sense.
actually. And I know I have an answer.
Yes, I have an answer, but I don't want to tell anybody. I don't want to admit that I watch Pokemon. No.
Yeah, Pokemon. When you really get into it, describe the
It's all about agorism. You raise animals and
I don't have a movie or a TV show right now, but one thing that I go to Burning Man every year.
Oh, cool.
Just a weird segue really quick, but there's a lot of like the way the media portrays it is a certain way where you have a bunch of sparkle ponies and gratuitous flesh showing and a bunch of like
Which
looks like a
there
bunch
is,
of
but
yes, a bunch of lefties running around, stuff like that. But my husband in particular has been involved with it for years. He goes out there and he builds the city, and then he's there for an event, and then he's there for another week tearing it down. So I usually go out there for a couple days every year, and I have observed it to be a very libertarian heavy environment, which over the years I've really kind of enjoyed rounding out that idea in my head, because literally the organization itself only provides you, kind of funny, but roads, porta potties, and like streetlights, and then everything else people are bringing in. So it's a
but what about my roads?
Yeah, what about my roads? And it's like, well, the state still provides them, but you have everything is voluntary. So all the association you have with people, whatever you do with your area, the exchange of goods that you have with people, it's not a barter system. It's just you voluntarily decide to exchange things with people for whatever you want. People go out there and build the craziest, most amazing things just because they want to. And I've noticed that even through the most politically charged years, no one, that the people around you don't agree with you. But everyone just gets along because you're playing community. Like you get to pretend to build a city and pretend like you could all live together and it would actually be okay. And so anyways, that's just a perspective sometimes I like to share about this big weird thing that happens. That's actually a good example of libertarianism in action.
That's actually even better than a TV show. So I wasn't expecting that.
It's kind of like a
And
TV show too.
now I know this is going to be the one you're going to have a hard time reining in. So I'm going to give you an option of five top podcasts. Like this, I'm like, you're like, I got this.
I like, I mean, Dave Smith, obviously, I think is a great gateway for a lot of people who want, like, have just encountered the ideas. What do you hate, Dave?
No, I love Dave. I'm just like right now. I love Dave. I just think people right now are Dave and James are going at it right now.
Oh, I know. I want to see the debate. I want to see what happens.
Oh, you mean the debate that will not happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I would still like to see it. It would be.
I would too.
Out
So
of
no,
control.
yeah, absolutely part of the problem with Dave and when he's got Robbie on there too. Just great
I love
content
Robbie. I saw Robbie. He came and did a porch tour here in Portland, or outside.
Oh, he did one for TJ Hawthorne, another person that are with TJ, another guy that from the Libertarian Party, good friend of mine that ran for Minnesota House, and they did a porch tour this summer, and I got invited, and I'm like, I can't afford the trip. I can't afford to go. He goes, come on, man, it's frothy, and I'm like, no money, no, I was broke. So Dave Smith.
I love Clint's Liberty Lockdown. I
Yep.
listen to that one every time he has a new episode out. Of course, Tom Woods, Scott Horton, both their shows are great. I'm always happy whenever they're a guest on anything. That's especially when there's like something really happening on the global scale, and I just really want to get it dialed down for me really quick. I'll go to those guys. And then there's a lot of little ones that I kind of bounce around and I don't know. So I'm trying to think of like a YouTube podcast now that I like to watch.
It's not easy because there's so much stuff that gets thrown at us.
The biggest ones, but there's so many little ones that I enjoy, and then I just don't recall their names. It's not a podcast, but I think it's really important to listen to. It's really important to keep your finger on the pulse of what other people are saying. Like we were talking about the echo chamber. Like I literally just listened to the echo chamber. If you just listen to that always, you'd be really well informed, but you wouldn't be great in conversation with people that don't see eye to eye with you. So I actually, every morning on my way back from town, I listen to NPR.
Oh, good for you.
Let me tell you.
You would get an education.
It is wild. Like you can really kind of predict the direction things are about to go.
Based on what they're saying?
Based on what they're saying and their perspective on things and being like, wow, this is the way that they're thinking. And this is why people are reacting this way because there's this crazy stuff that they're being told. And so I highly recommend it. Listen to the counter arguments as often as possible so that you can actually have a well-informed spectrum of information and not just like constantly confirmation bias for what you already believe.
Oh yeah, like absolutely agree. I do that with Brandon Tatum. I get that he's Omega and everything, but I have a problem with the whole having gone from the law enforcement world and seeing what law enforcement have been willing to do over the last 4 years, especially, and going forward. I struggle, but I make myself listen to Brandon at least once every few weeks, just at the very least, and Donut Operator, just to keep grounded.
Yeah.
And then I have been sitting on a panel, and I rage quit one night over something, and it was pretty serious. But I'm they asked me to come back, uh, but I was sitting on a panel where we were doing use of force review, and of course, I'm the libertarian voice, and then there's an attorney on there that she well, she goes lawyer Joe. She's on X, but she and I 98% of the time are in agreement, and I it's good for me because I have to sit there and listen to the very back the blue at all costs people
It's
and
hard.
remember who I'm interacting with. And there's some times where it's just like can't do it. Can't do it. Like I'm gonna like literally explode. So yeah, you're absolutely right about putting yourself in those positions. So
And also, it's like
um
any opportunity to defend your point. Because
yeah.
sometimes I will be making my argument with someone that's challenging my position. And I realize at some point it's like, I'm not actually that grounded in this. Like I know that I'm right, and I know, like, I feel like I'm right, and I have a pretty good idea where I'm coming from, but I need to now retreat and go like fully digest this so that I can come back at this topic and not just regurgitate something I don't actually know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's like me trying to talk to people about Lincoln. Like,
Yeah, I would
yeah,
never,
but I'm like, oh gosh, oh gosh.
I would never try to talk about Lincoln. That's like an area. It's like I don't have time to like really find my ground on that, except that he's probably a bad guy.
Which is still enough for people to get mad at you for just
Yeah.
saying that.
No.
But he saved the republic. Did
Yeah.
he? Did he? uh, well, I really appreciate your time. Tell everybody where they can find you, and then make sure you send me the links and the names of those books, by the way. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
You can
tell
find.
everybody where all the places they can find you.
Yep. You can find me on Twitter or X at Sonja Agora, SonjaAgora. I'm also the same name on TikTok, and then I think on YouTube I am the Liberty Farmer.
Yeah, we'll make sure we have those links in the description of the video. You can go and get out of here. I will do a close. I promise I won't say anything terrible about you. So if you have to like go see to the family or see to your chores or stuff or anything like that, it's 12:30 there. Are the kids
Yeah.
like cannibalizing each other?
There was one just like at the door, politely knocking, and I texted my husband saying, "Get her, get her." So,
Feed the
yeah, I
child.
appreciate it.
Feed
Thank
the
you so
child.
much for having me on. It was super
No,
fun.
thank you for making time. I know you've got a busy life, and I know when I reach out to people like, "Hey, let's get you on." It's life always gets in the way. It happens to me all the time, and so I was really glad that after the campaign season settled down, you reached out and asked about coming back on. So, like I said, I'd love to talk to your family down there at Helios. So
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll get you guys connected.
awesome. You have a good day, and thank you so much. And I will message you when this is ready to drop.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Folks, I wanted you guys to be able to hear this introductory conversation to agorism because so many of you have already kind of started to go down that road. You think about it. I hear it in this neck of the woods, just in southeast Minnesota, almost daily. In fact, just this morning, somebody on Facebook, I know I'm old, I still use Facebook. Somebody on Facebook who's far younger than I am actually posted in the Spring Valley Wyckoff area community page on Facebook looking for raw milk. And I thought that was apropos of my day, um, especially knowing I was going to have Sonja on. So um, I I want people to be challenged and get away from that mindset of, well, I just when I need meat, I can just go to the store. Yes, that's true, and I buy red meat at the store too. Like I'd much rather see people eating red meat from the store than chips if they have to choose between potato chips and uh, fast food options, obviously. And everybody's it's kind of goes to what we were saying when we were talking about the home education. You have to kind of meet people where they are. Not everybody can afford, you know. or not everybody's in a place where they think they can tackle something like that. Well, if you can start eating healthy by just eating what you can afford to buy at the store that is healthy, that's huge. And that may help you get to the point where you can start looking into other options, like trading with a neighbor. If if you've got chickens and you got a friend that raises cattle, maybe you can trade eggs for beef or pork or lamb or whatever the case might be. So that's, and then what else she said was about personal accountability. This movement, more than anything, is about personal accountability. Anarcho-capitalism, agorism, is about you taking accountability and ownership of your life. And you've all heard me say this ad nauseum, but I'm going to say it again. You don't live your life like a Republican or a Democrat. You really don't. No, there's a small percentage of Democrats and a small percentage of Republicans that actually live their lives like Republicans and Democrats. They get up in the morning thinking about how they can best control you, or you can be controlled by their philosophy. There are some people that are like that. But the vast majority of you live like anarcho-capitalists. You don't set your alarm clock in the morning or for the morning based on when somebody in the government tells you need to get out of bed. You don't have breakfast based on when you are told to eat breakfast by the government. You don't eat for breakfast what the government tells you to eat. You make your own choices. You make your own decisions. And some of those, yes, they're limited on your location, the nature of agriculture in your area, the availability of foods in a market. And we know there are people that do live in food deserts. But you still make those choices. You make those on your own. They're not contingent upon somebody lording over you. You live like a libertarian. You live like an anarcho-capitalist. All we're saying is, with anarcho-capitalism, libertarianism, individualism, volunteerism, agorism, take it the step further and start to look at how you can improve how you're living, how you can improve your life based on how you live. And I know it sounds funny to say, how do I improve my life based on how I live? Will you improve your life based on how you live? By making decisions that are best for you, that you know are for you, made by you. And then you spread that. It's a contagion. You spread that to the people around you. Not by beating them over the head with it, but by asking them subtle questions. That's how you make a difference. I have a friend that'll attest that they swung into libertarianism because of conversations with me, and I wasn't beating this person over the head with it. Now go get out of your echo chambers, all of you, especially those of you that are libertarians that are listening to this. Get out of your echo chambers, and Republicans and Democrats, same for you. Reach your hand across the aisle, shake that hand, and then say, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's find out in places where we agree. And if you can't find a single place where you agree with somebody, then you might be the problem. So, as my dear friend Monica made this for me now, going on a year and a half, and sent it to me. Handmade this, by the way. Handmade this with my tagline on it. Fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.
We are go for liftoff in T-30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.